Picture this: a sandwich shop with more locations than McDonald's, more stores than Starbucks, more reach than any restaurant brand in American history. At its peak in 2015, Subway operated over 27,000 restaurants across the United States alone. They were the undisputed king of fast food by sheer numbers, the largest restaurant chain in America. But just 9 years later, over 7,600 of those stores would vanish. Franchisees would file for bankruptcy, and the entire empire would be sold for $9.6 billion in what became one of the most dramatic collapses in modern business history. This is the story of how the world's biggest restaurant chain destroyed itself from the inside out. I end this video. I'm going to show you exactly how Subway went from a scrappy sandwich shop to a global phenomenon, and then how their own success became their greatest weakness. You'll see how aggressive expansion, a single promotional campaign, and one catastrophic PR disaster combined to unravel decades of growth. But here's what I want you to pay attention to. There's a specific location I visited while researching this story. An empty Subway restaurant that closed in 2023. And if you stick around to the end, I'll show you what I found inside that perfectly explains why this empire fell apart. It's not what you'd expect. By the end of this video, you'll understand the single biggest mistake that turned Subway's greatest strength into a fatal flaw. Let's go back to 1965. Bridgeport, Connecticut. Fred DeLuca was 17 years old. He needed money for college. His family friend, Dr. Peter Buck, a nuclear physicist, lent him $1,000 to open a sandwich shop. They called it Pete's Super Submarines. The concept was brilliantly simple: fresh sandwiches made to order, right in front of you. No pre-made mystery meat. No hiding the ingredients. Complete transparency. But here's what made Subway different from every other sandwich shop in America. They did the exact opposite of what everyone else was doing. While burger chains like McDonald's and Burger King were investing millions in complex kitchen equipment, proprietary cooking systems, and elaborate training programs, Subway kept it dead simple. A few tables, some cold cuts, bread and vegetables. That's it. This wasn't just cost-effective. It was genius. The timing was perfect. Americans in the 1970s and 80s were becoming increasingly health-conscious. They were tired of greasy burgers and fried chicken. They were hungry for something that felt lighter, fresher, healthier. And Subway gave them exactly that narrative. A sandwich you could watch being made. Fresh vegetables. Lean meats. The illusion of a healthier choice. But the real breakthrough wasn't the product. It was the business model. In 1974, Subway began franchising. And this is where the magic happened. To open a McDonald's franchise in the 1970s, you needed hundreds of thousands of dollars. Complex equipment, extensive training, real estate expertise. To open a Subway, you needed about $100,000, a small storefront, and the ability to slice bread and stack cold cuts. If you like my video, please subscribe my channel. The barriers to entry were incredibly low, and that meant Subway could expand faster than anyone thought possible. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Subway grew steadily. By the 1990s, they were exploding. The brand became synonymous with a healthier fast food alternative. They weren't just selling sandwiches. They were selling permission to feel good about eating fast food. Subway's competitors couldn't replicate this. McDonald's was locked into their model. Burger King couldn't pivot to sandwiches. The pizza chains were doing their own thing. Subway had found a lane that nobody else could compete in effectively. By the early 2000s, Subway was a cultural icon. And then came Jared Fogle. Jared Fogle's story is legendary in marketing history. A college student who lost 245 pounds eating nothing but Subway sandwiches. The brand didn't create Jared's story. They just had the brilliance to capitalize on it. From 2000 onwards, Jared became the face of Subway. And this did something extraordinary. It transformed Subway from a sandwich shop into a lifestyle brand. A health brand. A brand that could literally change your life. But the real unfair advantage wasn't Jared. It was the franchise model itself. Here's what made Subway's expansion engine so powerful: low capital requirements, simple operations, and high brand recognition created a perfect storm. Opening a Subway franchise was easy. Almost too easy. You didn't need restaurant experience. You didn't need sophisticated real estate analysis. You just needed capital and a decent location. And Subway's corporate team made it even easier. They'd help you find locations. They'd pressure you to open multiple stores. They'd show you projections of how profitable you could be. Between 2007 and 2009 alone, Subway added about 2,300 U.S. locations. From 2009 to 2014, they added roughly 4,000 more. This was exponential growth on a scale rarely seen in the restaurant industry. The economics seemed to work. Subway charged franchisees up to 12.5% of sales in royalties and fees. But franchisees were making money, so nobody complained. The brand was hot. Customers were flooding in. And here's the key: Subway wasn't just growing in traditional strip malls. They were going everywhere. Airports, gas stations, Walmart stores, college campuses, military bases, hospitals. This was the era of non-traditional venue expansion. And Subway dominated it. They could fit a Subway into spaces that would never work for a traditional restaurant. A tiny footprint, minimal equipment, maximum reach. By 2015, Subway had achieved something remarkable: over 27,000 U.S. locations. They had surpassed McDonald's as the largest restaurant chain in America by unit count. They were operating tens of thousands of restaurants worldwide. This allowed them to grow faster than anyone thought possible. The flywheel was spinning at maximum velocity. 2015 was Subway's moment of absolute dominance. They weren't just the biggest. They were everywhere. You couldn't drive through an American town without seeing multiple Subway locations. They had achieved complete market saturation. The brand had massive cultural validation. Subway was sponsoring athletes, sports teams, major events. They were a household name in virtually every country. Parents trusted Subway. Kids recognized the logo. It felt permanent. The revenue numbers were staggering. With 27,000 U.S. locations, each doing hundreds of thousands in annual sales, Subway was generating billions in franchise fees alone. The corporate entity was a cash-printing machine. Media coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Subway was held up as the model franchise success story. Business schools taught case studies on Subway's expansion strategy. Entrepreneurs dreamed of replicating their model. Jared was still the spokesperson, still doing commercials, still representing the brand as a force for positive change. If you like my video, please subscribe my channel. International expansion was accelerating. Subway was signing master franchise agreements in dozens of countries. They were planning to grow even bigger. 10,000 new international locations were in the pipeline. Deals in China alone could grow their footprint 7 times. Everything looked unstoppable. The empire seemed invincible. If you were an investor, a franchisee, or just an observer in 2015, you would have bet everything on Subway's continued dominance. How could they possibly fail? They had won. Game over. But something dangerous was already happening. Something that had been there all along, quietly growing beneath the surface. The same thing that made Subway's expansion so easy was now becoming a structural weakness. Those low barriers to entry. Remember, opening a Subway was simple. Almost too simple. And that meant Subway's corporate team had been approving new locations without sophisticated market analysis. If you had the money and found a space, you could probably get approved. This worked when markets were hungry for Subway. But by 2012, something started shifting. Same-store sales began declining. Not dramatically at first. Just small drops. Easy to ignore. But here's what was actually happening. Cannibalization. In many markets, Subway locations were so close together they were literally stealing customers from each other. You'd have 3 Subways within a mile radius. They weren't growing the overall customer base. They were just dividing the same pool of customers into smaller and smaller slices. Unit sales per store tell the real story. In 2012, the average Subway was doing about $482,000 in annual sales. By 2016, that number had fallen to $420,000. A 13% drop in just 4 years. For franchisees, this was devastating. That $60,000 difference might have been their entire profit margin. Some franchisees were now earning less than minimum wage after paying royalties, rent, and labor costs. But corporate didn't seem to care. Because Subway's revenue model was based on the number of locations, not the health of individual stores. More stores meant more franchise fees, more royalties, more system-wide revenue. This misalignment of incentives planted the seeds of something dangerous. Franchisees were struggling, but corporate kept pushing expansion. This worked for now. But it wouldn't work forever. The first crack in the foundation became visible with the $5 Footlong campaign. Launched in 2008, the $5 Footlong was a marketing phenomenon. The jingle was everywhere. Sales spiked. Subway gained massive attention. But there was a problem. The promotion destroyed franchisee economics. At $5, many franchisees were selling sandwiches at or below cost. The promotion was supposed to be temporary. But customers came to expect it. When Subway tried to end it, sales dropped. So they kept extending it. Year after year. Franchisees were trapped. They couldn't raise prices without losing customers. They couldn't afford to keep selling at $5. Profitability evaporated. Then came the second problem. Competition. If you like my video, please subscribe my channel. In the 2010s, the fast casual revolution exploded. Chipotle, Panera Bread, and a wave of new brands offered something Subway couldn't match: the perception of quality. These brands used words like artisanal, locally sourced, and craft. They had open kitchens with actual cooking happening. They charged premium prices and customers happily paid them. Subway suddenly looked cheap and dated by comparison. The healthy, positioning that once made them special was now table stakes. Everyone claimed to be fresh. Everyone had vegetables. Jersey Mike's, Firehouse Subs, and Jimmy John's started taking direct market share. These brands offered what felt like premium sandwiches, better bread, higher quality meats, actual flavor. Subway's traditional, make-your-own model, once innovative, now felt outdated. Younger consumers didn't want to spend 3 minutes telling someone how to build their sandwich. They wanted chef-created combinations. They wanted speed and quality. The third problem was technological stagnation. While competitors invested heavily in mobile ordering, loyalty programs, and digital integration, Subway lagged badly. Their app was clunky. Their loyalty program, My Way Rewards, faced constant technical issues. The user interface was confusing. The rewards weren't competitive. Competitors were building seamless digital ecosystems. Subway was still operating like it was 2005. The fourth problem hit Subway's core brand identity. The health halo started cracking. In Ireland, a court found that Subway's bread contained so much sugar it couldn't legally be classified as bread. The Footlong fraud controversy revealed that many Subway sandwiches were only about 11 inches long. Customers reported unsanitary conditions, stale ingredients, and inconsistent quality across locations. The healthy sandwich narrative that built the empire was collapsing under scrutiny. And then came the fifth problem, the one that changed everything. July 2015. FBI agents arrested Jared Fogle. The charges were horrifying. The details were worse. The man who had been Subway's face for 15 years, who represented health and transformation and positive change, was revealed to be a monster. Subway immediately cut ties. They scrubbed Jared from all marketing. They tried to distance themselves as quickly as possible. But the damage was catastrophic and permanent. Overnight, Subway lost the emotional connection they'd spent decades building. Parents who once saw Subway as a healthy choice for their kids now felt uncomfortable walking into the stores. The brand had been contaminated by association. This was the point of no return. Everything that came before, the cannibalization, the competitive pressure, the quality issues, could have been managed. This couldn't be managed. In 2016, for the first time since the early 1990s, Subway's U.S. store count began to decline. They closed more locations than they opened. The empire started shrinking. Franchisees who were already struggling now faced a brand crisis. Some filed for bankruptcy. Others simply walked away. The economics that were barely working before now became completely unsustainable. Corporate tried to respond. They launched the Fresh Forward Redesign Initiative. Bright colors, digital menu boards, self-service kiosks. They remodeled over 20,000 restaurants globally. But it didn't matter. You can't redesign your way out of a fundamental business model problem. The closures accelerated. 2018, over 1,000 locations closed. 2020, another 1,000. 2021, more than 1,000 again. By 2020, the writing was on the wall. Subway was in full retreat from the American market. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the decline. Subway's locations in airports, colleges, and office buildings were suddenly empty. Foot traffic vanished. Stores that were barely profitable became instant losses. Franchisees reported earnings sometimes dropping below minimum wage. Some described closing profitable locations just to cut their losses on underperforming ones. Franchise relations deteriorated as owners blamed corporate for poor support and conflicting priorities. The numbers tell the story. 2015, 27,000 U.S. locations. 2024, 19,502 U.S. locations. Net loss, 7,600 restaurants in 9 years. 2024 alone saw a net loss of 631 locations. For the first time in roughly 20 years, Subway's U.S. store count fell below 20,000. If you like my video, please subscribe my channel.